Put your science hats on, gang. I'm going to give you a little lesson. Have you heard of something called regreening? Do you know what regreening is? Let me tell you. Regreening is the process of new or enhanced vegetation growing across the planet. Why am I talking to you about this? Well, because NASA satellite imagery and all sorts of studies are now showing that over the last few decades, let's say 20 to 30 years, the regreening process of the Earth's surface has accelerated dramatically. 25 to 50% of the Earth's vegetated areas, so forests and green areas generally, are showing more and more and more growth. They are expanding. Not only that, but many dry areas that were previously drought-ridden, the edges of deserts, etc., are also showing a lot more plant life, a lot more vegetation, a lot more greening. Not only that, but generally speaking, crops are growing more easily and producing more produce. Now, obviously, some of that is down to the use of new fertilizers and chemicals and so on, which is not necessarily a good thing. But generally speaking, grasslands, feeding lands, vegetated lands, forests, arable lands are all growing at an incredibly fast rate. So much so that they suggest from this NASA imagery that an area twice the size of the entire United States, that's a big area, most of North America, has regrown in the last 25 to 30 years. That's a huge area. Why is that happening? Well, they won't tell you why it's happening because it's a bit of an inconvenient truth. It's happening because of more CO2, increased CO2 in the atmosphere. So you are constantly told, we're constantly told that CO2 in the atmosphere leads to global warming, leads to climate change, and leads to devastating floods and droughts and forest fires, etc. What they won't tell you is that CO2 is the food of life when it comes to plant life and vegetation. And so the small increases in CO2 in the atmosphere that we've had over that last 25, 30 years has led to a massive amount of new growth of vegetation, of forests, of grasslands, of croplands, etc., twice the size of the United States. It's led to areas of deserts, on the edge of deserts, which used to be not so much inhospitable and inhabitable, but certainly difficult to carve a living out in, suddenly becoming a little bit greener, more water appearing. And it's led to forested areas, large forested areas, and rainforests, etc., sprouting wings. What does that lead to? That also leads to more wildlife, more abundant insect life, etc. But we never get told these stories. It's true. Just put in NASA and regreening into pretty much any search engine and you'll find the details. Put it on X and there's loads of articles about it. So CO2 may potentially be an issue in the atmosphere, but it's not all bad. CO2 is part of the life cycle of this planet. We need CO2. In fact, if anything, if it dropped hugely lower than where we are now, that would be much more of a danger to us than higher CO2 would. So don't believe everything you're told. Regreening is a thing. Regreening due to more CO2 in the atmosphere is a thing. Forests, rainforest, wildlife in many areas of the world are proliferating because of the extra CO2 in the atmosphere. An area twice the size of the United States is now greener or much greener than it was before. And that's not a bad thing. You've always got to take everything with a pinch of salt. Things are never, ever, ever black and white in life. They're always shades of muddy grey. Things always have some pros and some cons, but you're only ever being told about the downside. You're only ever being told about the cons, and that just ain't the truth.